The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with laughter. Hundreds of alien species, from the crystalline bright ones to the gaseous cloud beings, were watching the human presentation with what could only be described as pure amusement. At the center of this cosmic circus stood Captain James Walker, his worn blue uniform standing out against the shimmering alien technologies that surrounded him. "You expect us to believe," the Bright One leader's voice rang through the chamber, its crystalline body glowing with pulses of mocking blue light, "that your species, barely 1,000 years into space travel, has discovered seventh-dimensional physics." Another wave of laughter rippled through the chamber. Walker stood straight, his weathered face showing no emotion. Behind him, the holographic display showed the Infinity Edge, humanity's newest and most ambitious vessel. Its sleek black hull, covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change even in the static image, represented 20 years of human innovation and determination. "We don't expect you to believe," Walker replied, his voice calm and steady. "We're here as a courtesy, to inform the Council of our upcoming test flight." He gestured to the ship's image. "The Infinity Edge will launch in 7 standard days." A beam made of pure energy floated forward, its voice translating through the chamber systems. "Captain Walker, our species has studied dimensional physics for 50,000 years. The Bright Ones, for over 100,000. Yet you claim your primitive civilization has solved what we could not." Dr. Miller, standing quietly beside Walker, stepped forward. Her gray hair was tied back in a simple bun, her eyes sharp behind basic glasses. She was the mind behind the 7D drive, though the aliens seemed to prefer addressing the captain. "The physics are sound," she said simply. "We've run over 10,000 simulations." This brought the loudest laugh yet. A Bright One scientist moved forward, its crystalline form towering over the humans. "Simulations," it chimed, the sound like breaking glass. "We have run billions of simulations over our history. The 7th dimension cannot be breached by simple material vessels. The energy requirements alone are completely reasonable when you approach the problem correctly." Dr. Miller interrupted. This caused a shocked silence, followed by more laughter. No one interrupted a Bright One scientist. The council leader, a massive being of swirling colors, raised its appendage for quiet. "Very well, humans, launch your vessel. We will observe this experiment. But be warned, dimensional accidents can be devastating. Your entire solar system could be at risk." Walker nodded. "We understand the risks. We also understand why you're all laughing. Humanity is young compared to your civilizations. We've made mistakes, had our failures. But we've learned something you seem to have forgotten. Sometimes the simplest answer is the right one." As Walker and Dr. Miller left the chamber, the laughter followed them. In the corridor, Walker let out a long breath. "That went about as expected," he said. Dr. Miller smiled slightly. "They're so certain they know everything. Did you notice none of them asked how we solved the energy problem? They're so convinced it's impossible, they didn't even consider we might have found a way." Walker's communicator beeped. The image of Max, the Infinity Edge's AI, appeared. Its avatar was a simple blue sphere, pulsing gently as it spoke. "Captain, the alien vessels are taking up observation positions around Earth's solar system. They're maintaining what they consider a safe distance." "Let them watch," Walker said. "How are the drive preparations going?" "All systems are operating within expected parameters," Max replied. "The dimensional threads are exactly where Dr. Miller's calculations predicted. We're ready whenever you are, Captain." As they walked toward their transport, Walker looked out a viewport at the vast alien fleet, hundreds of ships, each representing civilizations far older than humanity's entire history, positioning themselves to watch what they thought would be humanity's latest failure. 7 days, Walker said quietly. "In 7 days, we'll show them that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our determination." Dr. Miller raised an eyebrow. "Oh, it's our ability to think differently," Walker finished. to see what everyone else has missed because they're too busy following the old ways of thinking. The transport door closed behind them, leaving the sound of alien laughter behind. Soon, very soon, that laughter would stop. The crew gathered in the Infinity Edge's main conference room, their faces lit by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. Dr. Miller stood at the front, her hands moving through the floating images of intertwined lines and patterns that looked like a cosmic spiderweb. "The problem," she said, pointing to a traditional model of dimensions, "is that everyone thinks of dimensions as layers, like a stack of paper." She waved her hand, and the image changed to show the standard model that alien civilizations had used for thousands of years. They've spent centuries trying to punch through these layers, using massive amounts of energy. Captain Walker leaned forward in his chair. Around him, the 20 core crew members of the Infinity Edge watched intently. They had all seen this presentation before, but now, with the launch just 6 days away, it felt more real. "But that's not how dimensions actually work," Dr. Miller continued. She spread her arms wide, and the hologram expanded to fill the room. The crew found themselves surrounded by countless golden threads, all interconnected in ways that seemed to defy normal geometry. "They're more like this: a web, a network. Every dimension touches every other dimension at certain points." Max's blue sphere appeared in the center of the room. "Doctor, I'm detecting increased scanning activity from the alien observation fleet. They appear to be trying to analyze our ship's structure." "Let them look," Walker said. "They won't understand what they're seeing anyway." He turned back to Dr. Miller. "Please continue." She nodded, zooming in on one particular intersection of threads. "The aliens laugh because they think we're trying to break through dimensional barriers. But we're not. We're going to slip between them, right where they connect." The hologram showed a tiny point where multiple threads touched, like a spider moving along its web. One of the engineers, Tom, raised his hand. "But won't that still require massive energy? Moving between dimensions?" Dr. Miller smiled. "That's the beautiful part. It doesn't. Think about walking through a door. Does it take more energy than walking around the house? No. You're just using an existing pathway. These dimensional intersection points are natural doors. We just needed to learn how to see them." The hologram changed again, showing the Infinity Edge's unique engine design. The 7D drive doesn't create energy to break through dimensions. It creates a field that lets us see and interact with these intersection points. The energy requirement is minimal, just enough to maintain the field. Walker stood up and walked through the hologram to stand beside Dr. Miller. "The alien civilizations are so advanced, they've overlooked the simple solution. They built bigger and bigger hammers, trying to break through dimensional walls. We built a key instead." Max's sphere pulsed with new information. "Captain, the Bright One's flagship is requesting another meeting. They say their scans have detected concerning energy patterns from our engine tests." "Of course they have," Dr. Miller said with a small laugh. "They're looking for massive energy buildup, like their own failed experiments. Instead, they're seeing tiny, precise energy pulses. It probably looks like engine feedback to their sensors." Walker addressed the crew. "Tomorrow, we start final preparations. The aliens will be watching every move we make. They expect us to fail. They expect our ship to either do nothing or tear itself apart." He paused, looking each crew member in the eye. "But we know better. We've run the simulations. We've done the small-scale tests. We know this works." The hologram showed their planned test flight path, a simple loop around the solar system, using dimensional intersection points to cover distances that should take months in mere minutes. The golden threads pulsed gently, like they were inviting the humans to follow them. "Any questions?" Dr. Miller asked. The room was quiet. They had moved beyond questions now. They were ready to make history. Through the conference room's windows, they could see Earth below and the distant glints of the alien observation fleet. Soon, those watchers would see something they thought impossible. Something so simple, yet so revolutionary, that it would change the galaxy forever. Launch day arrived with a tension that could be felt throughout the Infinity Edge. The ship hung in Earth's orbit, its black hull reflecting the distant starlight. Inside the bridge, Captain Walker watched the tactical display showing hundreds of alien vessels at what they considered a safe distance. "They're broadcasting again," Max announced, its blue sphere flickering with amusement. "Would you like me to translate the alien communications?" Walker nodded, settling into his command chair. "Let's hear what they're saying about us now." The bridge filled with various alien languages, all automatically translated into English. Most were making jokes about the primitive humans and their impossible dream. The bright ones were being particularly vocal, their crystalline language turning their mockery into something that sounded like tinkling bells. "Captain," Max's tone changed suddenly, becoming more serious. "I'm detecting weapon systems powering up on several alien vessels. Low level, but active." Dr. Miller looked up from her station, where she was running final checks on the 7D drive. "They're scared," she said simply. "They're trying to hide it behind laughter, but they're terrified we might actually succeed." Walker pressed a button on his chair, opening the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. Final launch preparations are now beginning. Report to your stations and prepare for dimensional drive activation." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this moment hundreds of times in simulations. Each person knew their role perfectly, though none of them knew exactly what would happen when they actually activated the drive. "Engineering reports ready," Max announced. "All systems are showing green. The dimensional threads are exactly where we predicted." Through the bridge's main viewport, Walker could see Earth below them, beautiful and blue. Somewhere down there, billions of humans were watching and waiting. This wasn't just a test flight anymore. It was humanity's chance to prove itself to the galaxy. "Dr. Miller," Walker said, "start the drive initialization sequence." Her fingers moved across her control panel with calm precision. The ship's lights dimmed slightly as power was redirected to the 7D drive. On the tactical display, Walker could see the alien vessels adjusting their positions, their sensors all focused intensely on the Infinity Edge. "Initialization sequence complete," Dr. Miller reported. "The field is forming. We're beginning to detect the intersection points." The mocking alien broadcast suddenly included a new note: confusion. Their sensors were picking up energy readings that made no sense to them. The Bright One's flagship sent an urgent message: "Human vessel, our readings indicate a dangerous power fluctuation. We strongly advise you to abort your test." Walker smiled slightly. "Send no response," he told Max. "Dr. Miller, proceed with full drive activation." The bridge crew held their breath. This was the moment of truth. Either they would make history, or nothing happened. The ship stayed exactly where it was. The alien laughter, which had quieted briefly, returned even louder than before. "Drive is at full power," Dr. Miller reported calmly, seemingly unbothered by the lack of visible effect. "Field is stable. Intersection points are aligned." She looked up at Walker with a small smile. "Ready for navigation, Captain." The alien broadcasts were now filled with jokes about the failed human experiment. The Bright Ones were being particularly smug, broadcasting detailed explanations of why the human attempt was doomed from the start. Walker leaned forward in his chair. "Max, are you ready to navigate the dimensional threads?" The A sphere pulsed with confident blue light. "Course is plotted through the intersection points, Captain. I can see them as clearly as Dr. Miller predicted. They're beautiful. Then let's show our audience what humanity can do." Walker's voice was steady as he gave the order they had all been waiting for: "Execute dimensional jump." The alien laughter was about to stop. The first thing that changed was the light. As the 7D drive engaged, the space around the Infinity Edge began to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot pavement. The black hull of the ship seemed to ripple, as if it existed in multiple places at once. The alien laughter cut off abruptly. "Status report," Walker commanded, his voice steady despite the strange distortions he could see at the edges of his vision. "Drive is functioning perfectly," Dr. Miller replied, her eyes fixed on her readings. "We're seeing exactly what the simulations predicted. The dimensional threads are becoming visible to our instruments." Through the bridge viewport, the crew could see what looked like golden lines appearing in space, exactly like the hologram Dr. Miller had shown them before. But these were real, shimmering with an energy that seemed to call to them. Max's blue sphere pulsed with excitement. "Captain, the alien vessels are going crazy. Their sensors can't make sense of what they're seeing. The Bright One's flagship is demanding to know what we're doing." "No response needed," Walker said, a small smile playing at his lips. "Dr. Miller, are we ready for the first jump?" "Yes, Captain. Max and I can see the intersection point clearly." "It's right." She moved her hand through the air, pointing at what looked like empty space to untrained eyes. "There." Walker nodded. "Take us through." The Infinity Edge moved, but it didn't move like a normal ship. Instead, it seemed to fold, like a piece of paper being bent through impossible angles. For a split second, the ship existed in multiple places simultaneously, near Earth, halfway to Mars, and several other points in between. The alien broadcasts had gone from mocking laughter to confused shouting. Their sensors showed the human vessel appearing and disappearing at multiple points in space, doing things their most advanced systems said were impossible. "The Bright One's flagship is trying to track us," Max reported, amusement clear in its voice. "They've activated their highest-grade scanning equipment. Should I show you their sensor readings?" Walker nodded, and a new display appeared on the main screen. It showed the alien sensors frantically trying to lock onto the Infinity Edge, but the ship kept appearing as multiple ghost images, each one equally real and unreal at the same time. "Perfect," Dr. Miller said, checking her instruments. "The drive is creating exactly the kind of dimensional echo we predicted. To their sensors, we're everywhere and nowhere at once." The ship completed its first controlled fold through the dimensional intersection point. In less than a second, they had moved from Earth orbit to Mars orbit, a journey that normally took months. The golden threads of dimensional intersections were now clearly visible to everyone on the bridge, weaving through space like a cosmic spiderweb. "Message from the Bright Ones," Max announced. "They're demanding we power down immediately. They say what we're doing is impossible, and therefore must be dangerous." Walker laughed softly. "Send them this response. Impossible is just another word for something you haven't understood yet." The ship moved again, this time sliding between 3 different intersection points in quick succession. To the watching alien fleet, it must have looked like the Infinity Edge was dancing through space, ignoring all the laws of physics they thought they understood. "All systems are stable," Dr. Miller reported. "The dimensional field is holding perfectly. We could do this all day." Walker stood from his command chair and walked to the viewport. He could see the alien ships now, their positions scattered in confusion as they tried to follow the Infinity Edge's movements. The mocking laughter that had followed humanity's every step into space had been replaced by stunned silence. "Well, crew," he said, turning to face his bridge staff, "I think we've made our point. But just to be sure," he sat back in his chair with a confident smile. "Let's show them what this ship can really do. Let's give them something to really think about," Walker said, his eyes fixed on the glowing threads that now crisscrossed space like golden rivers. "Max, start the demonstration sequence we practiced." The Infinity Edge moved with impossible grace. First, it accelerated toward a small asteroid field between Mars and Jupiter. The alien fleet's sensors tracked them, or tried to. To their instruments, the human vessel left a trail of ghost images, each one as solid as the next. "They're still trying to make sense of our movement pattern," Max reported, its blue sphere pulsing with what almost looked like joy. "Their computers are overloading trying to predict where we'll appear next." Dr. Miller's fingers danced across her control panel. "The dimensional field is holding perfectly. Ready for Phase 2 of the demonstration, Captain." Walker nodded. Proceed. What happened next made the alien observer's previous confusion seem mild. The Infinity Edge approached a large asteroid, and then passed straight through it. Not around, not over, but through, as if the massive rock didn't exist. How? One of the junior officers breathed in wonder. We shifted slightly out of normal space-time, Dr. Miller explained, her voice calm despite the amazing feat they just performed. By moving through the dimensional threads, we can briefly exist in a state where solid matter doesn't affect us. The alien communications had gone completely silent. No more laughter, no more mockery, not even demands for explanation. They simply watched. Now for the real show, Walker said. Max, execute the multi-point manifestation. The AI sphere pulsed brightly. With pleasure, Captain. The Infinity Edge seemed to split into 3 perfect copies of itself, each one appearing at a different point in space. One near Mars, one by Jupiter, and one remaining near the asteroid field. Unlike the earlier ghost images, these were all equally solid, equally real. Temporal field is stable, Dr. Miller reported. We can maintain this state for 17 minutes before we need to reconverge. The alien fleet's sensors were going haywire. The Bright One's flagship launched a series of probe drones, trying to determine which version of the Infinity Edge was real. The answer, of course, was all of them, and none of them. They're scanning us with everything they have, Max announced. Their energy readings are off the charts. They're using more power trying to analyze us than we're using to do the impossible. Walker smiled at the irony. The aliens had spent millennia trying to brute force their way through dimensions, using massive amounts of energy. Now they were burning through that same energy, just trying to understand how humans had solved the puzzle with a fraction of the power. Message from the Bright Ones, Max said. Their leader is requesting an immediate consultation. Their tone is quite different from before. I bet it is, Walker replied. He looked at Dr. Miller. Ready for the final demonstration. She nodded, though her expression was serious. The calculations are ready, but remember, this will give them a glimpse of the drive's true potential. That's the point, Walker said. Show them that we're not just lucky amateurs who stumbled onto something by accident. The 3 versions of the Infinity Edge suddenly moved in perfect synchronization. They traced a complex pattern through space, following the golden threads of dimensional intersections. For a brief moment, time itself seemed to hiccup. Some of the alien observers would later swear they saw events happen both forward and backward simultaneously. When the ship reconverged into a single form, it had demonstrated abilities that the most advanced alien civilizations had thought impossible. Passing through solid matter, existing in multiple places at once, and even brushing against the edges of time itself. The stunned silence from the alien fleet said everything. Humanity hadn't just achieved dimensional travel. They'd mastered it in ways the older civilizations had never imagined possible. I think, Walker said quietly, they'd finally stopped laughing. Dr. Miller stood in the Infinity Edge's observation deck, staring at the golden threads that now seemed to fill space like a glowing tapestry. Behind her, the door slid open as Captain Walker entered. The Bright One's ambassador is almost here, he said, joining her at the window. They're sending their highest-ranking scientist. Apparently, this is the first time they've ever requested to board a human vessel. Dr. Miller nodded, but her attention was focused on something else. She held up her tablet, showing Walker a series of complex readings. Captain, I don't think they understand what we've really achieved here. None of them do. Not yet. What do you mean? The 7D drive doesn't just let us travel through space differently. She touched the window, her finger tracing one of the golden threads. These dimensional intersections, they're not just paths. They're the foundation of reality itself. Walker's eyes widened as he began to understand. You're saying, we're not just moving through space anymore, she said quietly. We're learning to see how reality is put together. The very fabric of the universe is like a giant piece of cloth, and we can now see the threads it's made from. Max's sphere appeared nearby, pulsing with excited colors. Dr. Miller's right, Captain. During our demonstrations, I noticed something. When we pass through the intersection points, we don't just move through them. We can influence them. The aliens' weapons, Dr. Miller added. Did you notice how they never fired, even though their systems were armed? They couldn't. Every time they tried to target us, we were technically in a slightly different reality than their weapons. The implications hit Walker like a physical force. We're not just traveling through dimensions, he said slowly. We're learning to control them. Exactly. Dr. Miller's voice was both excited and cautious. The 7D drive doesn't just let us move through space. It lets us manipulate the basic structure of the universe itself. We could, theoretically, reshape reality. Max's sphere flickered. Bright One's shuttle approaching, Captain. Their ambassador appears to be agitated. Through the window, they could see the crystalline shuttle approaching. Its surface sparkled with nervous energy patterns. Gone was the smug superiority the Bright Ones had shown before. They're scared, Walker realized. Not just of our technology, but of what it means. They'd spent thousands of years thinking they understood how the universe works, and in one day, we showed them that everything they thought they knew was just the surface. Dr. Miller finished. It's like they've spent millennia studying the ocean by looking at its surface, while we figured out how to dive deep and see the currents that actually move the water. The ship's communication system chimed. Captain, Max reported, the Bright One's ambassador is requesting we power down our drive before they dock. They say the dimensional distortions are interfering with their sensors. Walker looked at Dr. Miller. Should we? She shook her head. We can't. Not really. Now that we can see the threads, we can't unsee them. We're not causing dimensional distortions. We're just the first ones who can perceive what was always there. The golden threads seemed to pulse brighter, as if acknowledging this truth. Humanity hadn't just discovered a new way to travel. They had pulled back the curtain on reality itself, seeing the machinery that made the universe work. What do we do with this knowledge? Walker asked quietly. Dr. Miller smiled. What humanity has always done with new discoveries. We learn. We explore. We try to understand. And most importantly, she looked at the approaching alien shuttle. We teach others who are willing to learn. The universe, it seemed, had much more to show them. And humanity, the youngest of the spacefaring races, would lead the way into this new understanding. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council looked very different from the last time humans had stood there. Gone was the mocking laughter, replaced by an attentive silence as Captain Walker and Dr. Miller addressed the assembled species. The golden threads of dimensional intersections were visible even here, now that humanity had shown others how to see them. The choice before us is simple, Walker said, his voice carrying through the chamber. We can continue to compete and hold onto old beliefs, or we can work together to understand what we've discovered. The Bright One's leader, its crystalline form glowing with subdued colors, moved forward. You must understand our concern. In a single day, your species has changed everything we thought we knew about reality. That's exactly why we came back here, Dr. Miller said, stepping forward. Behind her, a hologram showed the infinity edge, now surrounded by a visible web of golden threads. We're not here to brag or to threaten. We're here to invite you all to join us in exploring these new possibilities. The energy being who had once mocked them now spoke with respectful tones. You would share this knowledge, even after our previous behavior. Walker smiled. That's what humans do. We learn, we grow, and we share. Yes, your laughter stung, but holding on to that hurt won't help anyone understand the universe better. Max's sphere appeared in the center of the chamber, surprising many of the alien representatives. If I may, the AI said, I've been analyzing the dimensional threads since our first jump. There are patterns within patterns, layers of reality we've barely begun to understand. It would take one species thousands of years to explore it all. But together, Dr. Miller added, "Think what we could achieve. Each of your species sees reality slightly differently. The bright ones understand crystal matrices better than anyone. The energy beings can perceive waves and frequencies we can barely detect. Together, we could unlock even deeper mysteries." The chamber erupted in excited discussion. Species that had looked down on humanity now spoke of cooperation and joint research ventures. The Bright One's leader approached Walker directly. "We were wrong about humanity," it chimed, its crystalline form shifting to show humility. "We thought age brought wisdom, that our long history made us superior. We forgot that sometimes the freshest eyes see things most clearly." Walker nodded in acceptance of the apology. Around them, representatives from hundreds of species were already forming research groups, making plans to study different aspects of dimensional science. Humanity's discovery had changed more than just space travel. It had changed how the galaxy's civilizations saw each other. "Dr. Miller," Max announced, "the first joint research team is ready to begin their analysis of the intersection points near the galactic core. They're requesting your guidance." She smiled, looking at the diverse group of aliens waiting eagerly to work with her. "Tell them I'll be there shortly. There's so much to learn, and now we have help in understanding it all." Walker watched as the chamber, once filled with mockery of humanity, transformed into a hub of cooperation and shared discovery. The Infinity Edge's achievement had done more than prove humanity's worth. It had shown that the universe still held mysteries that could only be solved by working together. "You know," he said to Dr. Miller as they watched the excited discussions, "they're not laughing anymore, but I think I like this better." She nodded, her eyes on the golden threads that seemed to weave all life together. "This is what real progress looks like. Not one species dominating others, but all of us learning and growing together." The threads pulsed gently, as if approving of this new path. Humanity had started this journey alone, mocked and dismissed by older civilizations, but they would continue it together with their new allies, exploring the deep mysteries of reality itself. The galaxy's laughter had stopped, replaced by something far more valuable: understanding, cooperation, and shared wonder at the mysteries they would now explore together.